So we know our chickens need a lot of calcium. Egg laying is a serious business. But there's a lot of different options out there. So let's break down the differences. So if we start from the beginning, there's really two main types of calcium supplements for our backyard chickens. Number one is oyster shells, and number two is limestone. Oyster shell doesn't really need much explaining. They're oyster shells, but we'll come back to that in a minute. Limestone is a natural material that is mined from the earth. And one thing to remember about limestone is once it hits or goes over 38% calcium, it's called calcium carbonate, not limestone. But you'll hear that again later. So you can probably guess where this is headed. Not all calcium is created equal. So let's jump into oyster shells versus limestone or calcium carbonate. And for the purpose of this video, we're going to talk specifically about FlockLeader Shell and Bone Builder when we're talking about calcium carbonate. So difference number one is sourcing. The calcium carbonate in Shell and Bone Builder is mined from high calcium limestone quarries here in the USA, where calcium content is at least 38%. Oyster shells, as you know, are a mollusk, and they can be harvested from domestic or international marine environments and are a byproduct of the oyster industry. Difference number two is processing. Shell and Bone Builder's calcium carbonate is mined from USA limestone quarries, ground up and processed to exactly the right particle size for the optimal release of calcium to our backyard birds. Oyster shells are collected and then need to be cleaned to remove the impurities on their shell. Then they have to be sterilized to kill any unwanted microorganisms. After that, they are ground or flaked to the size for chicken consumption. Processing oyster shells requires more steps, some of which are to remove impurities, aka that yucky stuff on top of the shell, plus a heating step to reduce the risk of pathogens. This part isn't necessary for USA mined limestone. Difference number three is composition. Shell and Bone Builder calcium carbonate is a minimum of 38% calcium and a minimum of 95% calcium carbonate. Along those same lines, it's always processed to the right particle size to allow for an optimal calcium absorption, and we take our quality control very seriously. Oyster shell contains 95% calcium carbonate and a small amount of magnesium carbonate and calcium sulfate. With this product, it's harder to gauge the quality of the calcium since it's totally dependent on that marine environment. This means that contaminated environments will result in a contaminated calcium source. And there's really no way to tell when this has happened. So to summarize, oyster shells and limestones are good sources of calcium. However, due to high levels of variability in the marine environment and the additional processing steps required, the safety and calcium quality in oyster shells is far less consistent. Shell and Bone Builder is a high-quality, safe source of calcium only harvested here in the USA. Try Shell and Bone Builder to get your flock the calcium that they need. Visit online at www.backyardchicken.com to learn more.